Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Ocean Stories. I'm Lydia, and I missed you. I'm sorry I've been gone. So much has been happening. If you have been watching the news, then I'm sorry. Somehow, over the past few months, I developed a fear of public speaking. Like, I grew a fear of something I was already doing. So it's been really hard for me to come back and record because I'm nervous, but it's time. It's time to come back. Ocean Stories is back. We have so many exciting interviews coming up. I know that I always say that, but just as a little teaser, we're going to be talking about the pollution sewage crisis at the border, which is something I've wanted to talk about for a long time. If you don't know anything about that, then stay tuned for future Ocean Stories episodes. We're going to be talking about AI and its environmental impact. We're going to be talking about fast fashion and its impact on the ocean, how those topics connect. And then we have some really cool interviews that I pre-recorded with business owners, founders, entrepreneurs, and nonprofit starters. All of that and more is coming. And if you want to see more from Ocean Stories, whatever you want to see, send me a message. But also, it would be great if you could review this episode, let me know your thoughts, and give the podcast a follow so more people can listen. Okay, so today what we're talking about is the federal layoffs and how they might impact Americans and, of course, the ocean, as you can see from the title. Now, I wrote these notes about 2 weeks ago when the layoffs first started happening in February. This episode is going to be for you if you want a general overview of what's going on with these layoffs, if you are seeing the headlines and seeing the panic and you're like, what's NOAA? Because I think a lot of the media assumes that people just know what NOAA is, but before doing this podcast, I had no idea what NOAA is. I didn't really know what the National Park Service did besides like, yay, national parks. But there's a lot to these things. So if you are in the dark on these things, then you are going to love this general overview. If you are a federal government expert and you're super in the know, then you might enjoy my commentary, but this is probably information you already know. I'm going to try and state mostly facts and allow you to draw your own conclusions, although you should know before listening that in general, as a person, I believe that we should invest in protecting, conserving, and researching our Earth's natural resources. Me, Lydia, as a person, my personal belief is that we should be investing in those things, and that bias sometimes comes out when I'm stating the facts. I believe this because some humans have historically shown that we are incapable of limiting our own selves from destroying or exploiting natural resources in order to make money and to feed the needs of capitalism. We live in a capitalistic world, so no wonder humans are driven to disregard nature for money. We are incentivized to do it, literally. So that's why I personally believe that we need governmental protection and, of course, research, because our systems don't place inherent value on nature. I do feel like I could sit here and tell you that laying off career scientists with 30 years of experience in an already very small, dedicated agency feels like an attack on science and an attack on the American people that depend on this data for their safety and an attack on the planet. I could tell you that in 2023, the US military spent $820 billion, while NOAA's budget was a little over $6 billion. But I'm going to try to focus more on what's going on right now and what we can do about it, because I realize that not everyone can see what's really happening. That being said, let's get into what's going on with NOAA, with drilling, with the National Park Service, and some ideas on what we can do about it. What is NOAA? NOAA. NOAA is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's a scientific and regulatory agency, and it lives within the U.S. Department of Commerce. Its mission is stated as to understand and predict changes in climate, weather, oceans, and coasts, and to share that knowledge and information with others. I'm not sure if this is part of its official mission, but something I've seen floating around is that NOAA really protects people and property, because through its science, its weather forecasts, climate information, marine resource management, really what they're doing is enhancing the safety of coastal communities and creating a more resilient world. Most divisions of the agency employ scientists and specialists in weather, oceans, biodiversity, climate, and other research and planetary monitoring fields. So, what happened at NOAA? Well, in late February, more than 800 employees were dismissed as part of Elon Musk's led Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. These are job cuts that we've seen happening all across the government. Advocates and activists were warning that NOAA might be a target, and unfortunately, we saw it come to fruition. Why should this be of extreme concern? Not to be dramatic or anything, not to be also doomsday-y, but why should it be of concern? I guess, why should it be on your radar at all? NOAA is our primary hub for weather and climate information. It's also a leading source of environmental data overseas. It is our authority on forecasting, storm tracking, and climate monitoring. So we're talking about extreme weather events like hurricanes, wildfires, and floods, which put communities in harm's way. We just cut 800 jobs to the already small agency that forecasts and researches how we can respond to these types of weather disasters. More than 100 of the employees within the 800 cut were in the National Weather Service, which lives in NOAA. Like we're seeing with other government cuts, this happened to probationary employees in job functions across the board, which included forecasters who issue life-saving warnings to the public, at least 4 meteorologists with more than 30 years of experience, and lots of young new scientists who we obviously need to grow in this field because there are only going to be more and more climate research needs as time goes on. The entire NOAA External Affairs office was deleted. So if you're still listening to this and thinking, well, why should this matter to me? Do you check the weather forecasts? Well, NOAA satellites and scientists are the ones that are checking this data and turning it into a weather forecast that we can read and that is shared all across the country, which helps us make everyday decisions like what to wear. And that's kind of a menial thing compared to the bigger decisions of how weather forecasts can influence things like trade or agriculture. Are you a seafood lover? Kind of a hot take, but listen, on Ocean Stories, we love everyone. And so if you're a seafood lover, NOAA manages fisheries. They are basically our country's sustainable fishery managers. So if you love seafood, if you enjoy eating safe seafood, then this might be of concern to you. The fishing industry also supports 1.5 million jobs. So this isn't like a small little industry in the US. This is a pretty big thing. Lastly, I hope this captures pretty much everyone listening. If you love the beach, NOAA's job is to restore and protect coastal environments. So this includes things like toxic waste, marine debris, everything that could potentially impact your beach-going experience. NOAA is on top of that. This information is actually inspired by a LinkedIn post by a previous NOAA employee named Janie Bavishi. Thank you, Janie. And she also notes that if you like to boat or surf, NOAA provides everything from nautical charts to daily surf updates. So it's pretty much in our best interest to be concerned about these things. Now, if you've been watching the news, then you've probably seen that about a week before the National Park Service, 1,000 employees were laid off. Again, this was mostly employees in their quote-unquote probationary period. The thing is, the term probationary period makes people think, oh, well, it was all new employees who were there for less than 6 months or something like that. So it kind of just sounds better, like, oh, probationary period, like they were just, new people and they can just go find another job. The thing is, when you switch to a new department or a new role, if it's different enough from your last one, then you are in a probationary period. That's like the layman's terms overview. I'm sure there's a technical way to say that, but that could mean that you could have been working there for 8 years, but you just transferred to a new department, so you're in a new 2-year probationary period. During Christmas time, I read this book, Ranger Confidential, because I was actually visiting national parks with my family. Great book, kind of depressing, but it was really fun to read while at the national parks. And in it, they talk about how it is extremely common for National Park Service workers to transfer multiple times. Like they're basically constantly transferring because there's not a lot of open, especially rangers, there's not a lot of open positions. And so they're always sort of living this transitory, moving around lifestyle, trying to get their dream position within the National Park Service, which means that a lot of very experienced people were in their probationary period and they were laid off. As a result of this, some parks have already reported a change in their open hours, closing a few days a week because of a lack of staffing. Now, it's easier to see why this is crazy important if you're an American, because hopefully you know about national parks. But if you've never been to one, about 300 million people visit our national parks every year, including me this past year with my entire family, as we went on a 2-week vacation across Utah, Arizona, in Nevada. Now, huge lines are already forming at super popular parks and super famous spots because the existing employees are scrambling, running around, trying to figure out how to reorganize and what to do thanks to all of the cuts for what was, again, already an understaffed agency. The cuts to the National Park Service got a lot of media attention because these are quintessential American dream and vacation plans. It's part of our identity, the Great Park Vacation, and it's often called America's best idea. It's preserving and protecting these lands. And so there was a little bit of a back and forth with the government where they agreed to continue hiring seasonal workers, which I guess were originally that was cut out of the budget, but then it was added back in that they would hire a couple thousand seasonal workers. But it's still really important to keep being vocal and to still talk about the 1,000+ people that were let go with years of expertise and knowledge, because we actually do need year-long normal, like not seasonal workers staffing the national parks. Read that book, Ranger Confidential, and you will see how dangerous they are, how scary they are, how many people die there per year. I was shocked, okay? And then you will know what I mean. Okay, so what's going on with Drill Baby Drill? I promise we're almost done with the bad news, but what's going on with Drill Baby Drill? If you've seen these inspirational reels with being like, why would we drill baby drill this? What's going on? Okay, you can pretty much guess what's going on, but I'll just fill you in. During the presidential campaign, Trump promised that he would boost American fossil fuel production and reverse climate policies and regulations that were created to reduce U.S. carbon emissions. And in his first few weeks, he has gone full steam ahead on delivering on these promises. He made an executive order that attempted to revoke a bunch of things, like in one executive order. If you click on it, there's like 100 things on the list. But one of them was former President Biden's withdrawal of vulnerable areas of the ocean from future oil and gas leasing. To make that a little more clear, President Biden protected areas off the Eastern Gulf, Atlantic, Pacific, and Alaska coasts by invoking his authority under the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act. So what? Basically, he protected a bunch of ocean areas from oil and gas leasing, and in one of Trump's executive orders, he revoked this. A lot of people are concerned about this, Republican and Democrat alike. They are worried about expanding oil and gas drilling off of the coastlines. We do have a sort of energy crisis, and a huge energy question is the way that I would like to look at it, as why and how we are continually increasing our energy use, but we aren't investing in sustainable solutions at the same rate. And so, yes, we do need more energy and we need more electricity, but is this the way? That's the energy question. What's most concerning to me is that other countries are following the United States in terms of lack of care about the environment. A lot of political leaders in this space have been saying, well, if the United States, isn't complying with the international agreements like the Paris Agreement, why should poorer countries be asked and forced to comply with it? It's sort of the situation where it's like, well, if he doesn't have to do it, then why should I have to do it? It's expensive. Nobody wants to do it. It's difficult. It's not the current system we have. Transformation is not like, yeah, so easy. Like, let's do it. Let's go for it. And if your neighbor is not doing the transformation and investing in it, then you're going to be like, well, if he's not doing it, then I don't have to, type of thing. So let's get into what can we do about it, or how should we be thinking about it, or how can we go about our daily lives without crying every day because this is so horrible. What can we do about it? Well, one of the people I look up to a lot, Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, she's a marine biologist. She's a conservation advocate and a policy expert, especially when it comes to marine stuff, but also for climate at large. She wrote a book called What If We Get It Right? Vision of Climate Futures. It's supposed to be a optimistic view of what if we get it right? What if we do all of the things that we need to do? And I actually have this book on hold at the library, so whenever I get it and read it, I was thinking of doing an Ocean Stories episode that's like a summary of the book. So if you're interested in that, let me know. One like and I'll do the episode. One comment, I'll do the episode. If I don't hear from anybody that they want that, then I won't do it. No worries. But she wrote an article for the Rolling Stone about what are we going to do? Like, what are we going to do? And of course, it was inspiring and I loved it. In the article, she talks about how on Trump's first day in office, he signed 9 executive orders that were trying to sabotage climate solutions. Like we already talked about, he is saying that we are in an energy emergency, even though US oil and gas production is at an all-time high, like a global record high, leaving the Paris Agreement, reopening protected areas to drilling and mining. One of the extremely concerning things that I didn't even touch on in this episode is that he terminated all federal environmental justice programs and positions. That's concerning because 40% of Americans live in coastal counties. 40%. That's a lot. That's almost half. And 20% of Americans live in coastal cities. And the demographics of these cities are very diverse, which means that we need environmental justice to ensure that mitigation solutions, which basically is like fancy words for what we're going to do to stop the negative impacts of climate change. How are we going to make sure that the solutions are equitable if the environmental justice positions were nixed? Anyways, what she talks about is actually quite positive. She says there is so much that city and state governments can do to implement climate solutions without federal support. And even over the past, 10 years, I've personally noticed that a lot of cities are doing their own investments in climate mitigation. I'm thinking of New York City, but I'm sure there's plenty more. Oh, and Miami. They're both investing billions into infrastructure that will hopefully protect them from rising sea levels. Obviously, I wish that we could address this problem from the source, but beggars can't be choosers. We need to go from all angles. Anyways, some of her biggest pieces of advice that resonated with me were to join a local environmental group or to find a home, a community, or whatever. She didn't say or whatever, that's just me saying that. She's saying finding a home that you can settle into, that you can connect with people, where you can put forth like some sustained effort into the environmental movement, to act locally and to speak up about this stuff. You might have heard of the Surfrider Foundation. There's a bunch of others. The Sierra Club, I think, does environmental organizing. There's a lot of local orgs in San Diego. If you want a list, let me know, or just go through who I follow on Instagram, because I follow about 700 environmental orgs local to San Diego. But connecting with the community about these things, and then just speaking up, because what I find is that a lot of people know from the headlines, okay, well, there was a lot of cuts to NOAA, but a lot of people don't know what's truly going on, what NOAA actually does for their lives. And then there are also ways to pester your representatives, which we saw with the National Park Service, that actually does make a difference. A lot of people these days are like, why would I ever do anything? My voice doesn't matter, and it feels like it doesn't. I know, because my voice feels like it doesn't matter either. Listen, I understand. Like, I'm not saying that I wish it was a world where you called your representative and they were like, hi, Lydia, like, how's it going? I'm so happy to represent the 10th District of Virginia. No, but when people make their voices heard, it means something, okay? It means something. If nothing else, it gives you that empowering feeling that you did something, if nothing else, at the bare minimum. But at the best case scenario, you actually just annoyed your representative enough to actually care and give a hoot about this, which, I don't mean to like make light about the failings of our democracy and laugh about them. I laugh sometimes at the absurdity of things, not because I think it's funny, but there's an app called 5Calls, and I highly recommend downloading it. You know what else I recommend actually is when you're on Instagram scrolling around, follow environmental justice advocates, because they are always posting and sharing ways for you to engage in these issues. And that is not easy. And they are most of the time not being compensated. These are not influencers. They are not getting money every time you click the link and sign the survey. Okay, they do these things because they genuinely care. And so if you also genuinely care, stop the scroll, click the link, sign the survey, or download the 5Calls app. They have invented all of these amazing, easy ways to contact your representatives. And it just takes people actually pausing and stopping and engaging with them, not just looking and scrolling past going, oh, that sucks. Like, dang, this really sucks. Because listen, takes one to know one. I'm saying that because that's been me in the past. So it's also a pep talk for myself. So why am I talking about all of this on Ocean Stories? Well, this is the story of our oceans and our planet right now. I would love to live in a world where I can talk all day about the beautiful people with fascinating and interesting lives in, on, and around the ocean, and I still plan on highlighting and sharing those stories and those voices because I am an optimistic gal, and I do believe on focusing on all of the good work being done just as much as the negative work. But I, in reality, am actually 26 at a time when the environment is heavily politicized and the earth, and especially the oceans, do not seem to be a national or global priority, despite so many years of so many people's lives being dedicated to getting climate on the agenda. So anyways, I hope you found some of this information helpful to your understanding of the issue, and I will do my best to keep you posted and to keep you updated in my own way. On Instagram, I will start sharing whatever petitions or calls to actions that I see from the Ocean Stories community. If you want me to share some positive thing that you thought of that I missed during this, please let me know. And I just want to put out a general reminder that when things feel bleak, you have to think about and remember the thousands and millions of people who care so much about this sort of thing. They did not just disappear when Trump fired them or signed whatever order. They're still out there. We still exist. There are people still working, and that's not going anywhere, no matter who is in power. Links to a bunch of the things that I mentioned will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. I'm super happy that Ocean Stories is back, and I'll talk to you next week. Okay, bye.